Dawn, September 1st, 1939. The German army invades Poland. World War II begins. Within a week, the Germans overrun the country and stand at the gates of Warsaw. Poland's capital is the people's pride, home to 1,300,000 Poles, among them 360,000 Jews. But Warsaw is the spiritual and political capital of all Polish Jewry, the largest Jewish community in Europe. For 3 weeks, the city staggers under a massive barrage of artillery and bombing. Large areas lay in ruins. Tens of thousands take flight, among them much of the Jewish leadership. They are headed east. On October 2nd, the city falls. The SS and Gestapo set in motion the plan of their commander, Heydrich. Jews from the surrounding towns and countryside are rounded up and herded into Warsaw. Jewish property is vandalized, Jewish businesses confiscated, schools closed, and public prayer banned. One of the first Nazi edicts requires the Jews to wear armbands. The Star of David makes them easy to identify, easy to harass, humiliate, and haul off to forced labor.
They come to a Jewish family and take everything: pictures, carpets, furniture, shoes, everything. The mother begs them to leave a crib. They answer, Jewish babies don't need cribs.
A forlorn Jew waiting in line for hours for a scrap of food is hauled off for 24 hours of hard labor, still hungry and thirsty. But the physical oppression isn't as bad as the suffocating atmosphere. The awareness that you're no longer men, that you're at the mercy of every bully and thug.
The Judenrat, the Jewish council, is established on orders from the Germans to enforce the Nazi edicts. But the Judenrat, led by Adam Chernyakov, also tries to ease the hardships of the ghetto and supply essential services. It establishes a Jewish police force to maintain order and carry out its directives. On Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Atonement in 1940, a year after Warsaw's fall, the Jews absorb another blow.
The radio announced the establishment of a Jewish quarter. It said disease was rampant among the Jews. All the Jews must move into the quarter in order to safeguard the city's health.
The Jews of Warsaw are imprisoned in the ghetto, walled in, cut off from the outside world. Any Jew caught outside the ghetto without permission is executed. About 130,000 deportees and refugees swell the Jewish population. The congestion is horrible. Disease and hunger take hundreds of Jewish lives each day. In 1941 alone, a tenth of the ghetto dwellers perish.
That we are condemning the Jews to death goes without saying. And if they will not die of hunger, then anti-Jewish measures must be stepped up.
Hunger claims many victims. The daily food allowance for a German is 2,300 calories. For a Pole, 650 calories. For a Jew, 180.
80% of the ghetto's food is smuggled in. Organized groups of smugglers, as well as individuals, are active in the ghetto.
Children squeeze through cracks in the ghetto wall. Outside, they exchange valuable possessions for potatoes, carrots, and onions. Anyone caught is shot. Against this background of oppression, disease, and hunger, the Jewish Self-Help Association is founded. It opens public kitchens, clinics, children's homes, and orphanages. It organizes cultural activities, some in public, some in secret. There are theaters, choral groups, and sporting events, Hebrew and Yiddish classes, vocational training, and a lending library. House committees are formed for welfare, education, and culture. Clandestine religious services are held.
You behave as if you'd go on living, as if the world would go on as before. You get up each morning, you drink, you eat, sometimes you even sing and love.
In his secret Oneg Shabbat archives, historian Emanuel Ringelblum chronicles life in the ghetto. Hundreds of documents, essays, and studies are hidden in empty milk cans and tin cases and buried underground. Some will be unearthed after the war. The youth groups, Hechalutz, Beitar, and the Bund, are reorganized, and hundreds of young people join their ranks. Most activities are educational, clubs, counselors' seminars, newsletters. The Dror movement even runs a high school. The youth groups work to strengthen Jewish roots and links to the land of Israel.
We young people did all sorts of things, and we lived like in a kibbutz. It was our salvation. It taught us mutual respect, not to treat each other like animals.
The pioneering movements maintain contact with their members in the cities and towns of occupied Poland. The walls of isolation are broken by women couriers using forged documents. They spread news of the ghetto and communicate with a few Polish friends who remain loyal. In constant peril, they smuggle underground news sheets, documents, money, and eventually, weapons.
I spoke Polish even better than Yiddish, and I really looked like a Christian, with long blonde braids and lots of self-confidence. To get 5 pistols, we had to cover 800 kilometers, and many couriers were killed on their runs.
On June 22, 1941, Germany invades the Soviet Union. In the autumn and winter, the news reaches Warsaw. Massacres in Vilna in the east and mass exterminations in the Helmno death camp in the west. The youth movement leaders are the first to understand. The last stage of the Nazis' final solution of the Jewish problem has begun.
After we heard about the horrors of Vilna and Helmno, we slowly began to believe that it was really happening. But most of the Jews could not. Neither the masses nor the leaders really believed what they were hearing.
A person who lives for months or years on a slice of bread and a bowl of soup cannot think of anything but bread and soup.
In March 1942, the first attempt is made to establish a resistance movement, comprising all the groups and political movements in the ghetto. The attempt fails. At the end of March, the communists, along with the socialist Zionists and the pioneering youth movements, organize on their own. They establish the anti-fascist bloc, committed to armed resistance. But the bloc quickly disintegrates under stepped-up German terror. On July 22, 1942, the eve of Tisha B'Av, the mass deportations begin. The next day, Judenrat chairman Adam Chernyakov takes his own life. The Gross Aktion lasts about 7 weeks. Some 300,000 Jews perish, most of them in the gas chambers of Treblinka. Wives are separated from husbands, babies from mothers. The distinguished Jewish educator Dr. Janusz Korczak marches to the transport yards, leading 200 well-scrubbed, neatly dressed children. When the deportations finally cease, about 55,000 people remain in the reduced ghetto areas. On July 28th, the leaders of the Hashomer Hatzair, Dror, and Akiva movements assume responsibility for the fate of the ghetto. They establish EAL, the Jewish Fighting Organization. Its goal, to defend Jewish lives and honor, to revenge Jewish deaths. Yitzhak Zuckerman, Sivia Lubetkin, Mordechai Tenenbaum, Joseph Kaplan, and Shmuel Braslav are chosen as commanders. While trying to find weapons outside the ghetto, EAL calls on the Jews within to resist deportation. EAL assassinates the chief of the Jewish police for collaborating with the Germans.
Treblinka is death. I want Jews to see blood in the streets of Warsaw, not in Treblinka. Hide yourselves and your children. Escape the ghetto. Build shelters.
When we put up the first proclamations, other Jews pulled them down and said, "These youngsters will bring about our destruction."
They never imagined the ghetto might be eliminated, so they never considered armed resistance. Most of the ghetto dwellers opposed it. Everyone thought that he'd be spared.
When the deportations cease, EAL reorganizes and broadens its ranks. The political movements drop their opposition to armed struggle and set up a national committee with Mordechai Analevich, commander of EAL, and Yitzhak Zuckerman, Antek, his deputy. Beitar and the revisionist movement organized their own group, the Jewish Military Union, commanded by Pavel Frankel.
To the Jewish masses, the moment of truth approaches. You must be ready to resist. Let not a single Jew board the boxcars. Those unable to resist actively will do so passively.
On January 18, 1943, the Germans renew the deportations. Many Jews go into hiding. The Jewish Fighting Organization undergoes its first test. Among the fighters is poet Yitzhak Katzenelson, who captures the German surprise. The Jews are shooting.
A group of fighters from Hashomer Hatzair fell in among the deportees. When the column reached the corner of Zamenhof and Niska streets in front of the Umschlagplatz, the signal was given. The fighters drew their guns, shooting and throwing grenades. The Germans were shocked and surprised. Some were wounded and the others ran for their lives. The Jews marching to deportation dispersed. The Germans called in reinforcements and the battle raged. Fighter after fighter fell. Commander Mordechai Analevich grabbed the German's gun and managed to escape.
Another battle takes place at 59 Zamenhof Street, where the Germans break into an apartment house in search of Jews. An EAL squad led by Yitzhak Zuckerman waits in ambush. One fighter, Zacharia, stays in the apartment while the others hide. When the Germans leave with the bait, the fighters emerge and shoot them from behind. 2 Germans are killed and the others flee.
Today, the Germans deported only several hundred Jews. The Jews are hiding and the Germans are scared. The young people's fighting has forced them to cease the Aktion.
We felt we were doing something for the generations to come, so that the world would know.
The Jews of the ghetto form an alliance with the resistance fighters and build hiding places in the cellars and bunkers, stocked with food and arms enough to outlast another deportation. The Jewish Fighting Organization is deployed in 22 squads spread over 3 ghetto areas. On April 19, 1943, Easter Sunday, the Germans launch a final Aktion. large, well-trained force of 2,000 troops and 36 commanders with tanks and heavy artillery sets out to battle several hundred poorly armed ghetto fighters. The Germans have planned every detail, including a film crew to document the campaign of destruction and deportation. On the first day of the uprising, SS General Jürgen Stroop writes in his log, "While deploying our units, Jews and bandits launched an organized attack. Molotov cocktails were thrown at the tank and 2 armored cars. Twice the tank caught fire. We lost 12 men."
At 4 in the morning, we saw a column of Hitlerites moving along Nalewki Prospect toward the central ghetto. Marching, marching endlessly. Suddenly, I felt how weak we were. But then, when we saw what they were throwing into the fight against us, our spirits soared.
The German forces broached the ghetto along Nalewki Street, spit-polished, in high spirits, singing a military march. When they reach the corner of Gensha, bombs, grenades, and Molotov cocktails fly from house number 33. The Germans disperse and withdraw, leaving their casualties on the pavement. There are no Jewish losses. A second German column heads from the ghetto gate to Zamenhof Street, but the Germans place Jewish police ahead of the troops to shield them from the first burst of fire.
I asked what I should do, attack or not. I was told to wait. After the Jewish policemen passed, the German motorized column came into view. An electric mine exploded among them with a tremendous blast. That was the signal to open fire. We threw hand grenades from all sides, from every position on both sides of the road. The battle raged for half an hour. The Germans retreated, leaving many dead and wounded. One heavy tank went up in flames, and another got stuck.
During the afternoon, units of the Jewish Military Union concentrate around Muranov Square, directing withering pistol and machine gun fire at the German troops. The Jewish fighters hoist a blue and white flag, and alongside it, the flag of Poland. They block the German advance and knock out a tank. As the first day of battle ends, the results are better than expected. The fighters are euphoric. Most of the action on the second day takes place in the Brushmakers area. 5 squads of Eyal fighters are deployed here, led by Marek Edelman. At 2 o'clock, a German column approaches the gate. A Jewish fighter detonates a mine, and the Germans withdraw with their wounded. When they return, the fighters open fire with everything they have. A German artillery crew is wiped out. On the 4th day of the uprising, the Germans change tactics. They set fire to the ghetto to flush the people from their bunkers, the fighters from their positions. The troops systematically burn block after block of houses, then dynamite them. Still, writes General Stroop, many Jews refuse surrender, choosing instead to leap to their deaths from the flame-lapped windows.
The asphalt melts under our feet and becomes a sticky, soft black goo. One after another, we escape through the flames, from house to house, from yard to yard. There is no air to breathe. Burning timbers topple around us.
SS Commander Heinrich Himmler wires his men in Poland.
The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising must be put down mercilessly with an iron fist. The tougher the better. This shows just how dangerous the Jews really are.
General Stroop reports. The girls were as heavily armed as the men. They had pistols in both hands. Again and again, they hid guns and grenades in their undergarments. On the 5th day, Stroop sends his troops in to comb the ghetto for bunkers and blow them up. The Jewish fighters change tactics, fighting by night, setting up ambushes in the attics. The burning of the ghetto continues. The Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, hits pockets of resistance with incendiary bombs. At the end of the first week, the fighters abandon the attics for new positions among the ruins and in the bunkers below, ready to deploy for nighttime raids. General Stroop reports the destruction of 631 bunkers, but more remain. The Battle of the Bunkers becomes a stubborn popular struggle, with all the Jews taking part.
I cannot think of anything but a breath of air. I sit here, my mouth agape as to all around me, deluding ourselves that we can swallow some air. No one talks. It makes breathing harder. Everyone's on edge. We haven't eaten in 24 hours.
On May 7th, the Germans discover the bunker at 18 Mila Street, the headquarters of Mordechai Anilevich and some 100 fighters. The Germans toss in gas and smoke grenades. Many of the uprising leaders, including Anilevich, commit suicide. Only a handful manage to escape. On the 9th of May, they descend into the sewers in a desperate attempt to get out of the ghetto. Stroop reports. Today at 9 o'clock, by the manhole on Prosta Street outside the ghetto, Jews who commandeered a light truck were seen detonating 2 grenades, a signal to the thugs in the sewer to come out. All of them were armed. They emerged, got into the truck, and drove off. On May 16th, Stroop assembles his staff to watch the dynamiting of the Great Synagogue outside the ghetto walls. To the Germans, this act signifies the end of the uprising, the end of the ghetto. Stroop proclaims, there is no longer a Jewish quarter in Warsaw. But the celebration is premature. Polish sources say the ghetto fighting continues. They report hearing gunfire from the ghetto as late as October. Living and fighting among the ruins, the last fighters attempt to escape, but all fall in battle. In his last letter to Yitzhak Zuckerman, dated April 23rd, Eyal Commander Mordechai Anilevich writes, "Peace be with you, dear friend. Perhaps we'll meet again. But my life's dream has already come true, for I have been privileged to see the Jewish defense of the ghetto in all its greatness and glory."